Ooh. Uh-oh, I can see my breath. What's that doing? Maybe I'll reach up and readjust this mic a little bit. Oh, there. How's it registering? Oh, yeah. There we go. Can't wait for somebody to ask why I'm wearing a hat again. Can kind of see my my breath. Oh, my goodness. Ooh. I think this might be my last time out in the barn for one of these. I think I got to bring this thing inside. Start doing live streams in my kitchen or something like that, because this is it's getting old pretty quick. Yeah. Goodness, what is going on? I'm trying to think what happened in the world of karting. Oh, World 100, that happened. I didn't. The Four Takes and Fuel guys were talking about all the to-do afterwards, and that it was a bad track and stuff, and you know, not an ideal track. That it had rained, and then the fog brought in, and there was dew and this and that, and I didn't see any of it. Maybe I'm not plugged into the southern hemisphere of racing as much as I think I am. Yep. Yeah, I'm. It's cold. When I was kind of bundling up coming out, and I was like, oh man, this might be the last Thursday I do out here. It's really it's wearing on me. I like being in the shop. I like being with stuff, and yes, I know I could get a heater, or should get a heater or something, but anything that's going to make a difference, unless I buy something expensive, is going to be like a salamander or something, and that makes too much noise. That won't work. So my kitchen is nice and quiet. Yeah. Making the Reaper. Yeah. Depends on there's some ones that I plan on doing that don't actually how do I want to say it? It doesn't take me showing anything. It'll just be basically a talking about video. I did want to get with Chris Harris on it and find out some other stuff that I might not know. I didn't want to come in blindly, just my experience with it, because it was, my experience with it, it wasn't the track for it. So I'm not going to judge it upon that. I got a sneaking suspicion if I do the Clone Wars again, if that's happening in Selinsgrove like it did last year, I intend to go. I'll probably be using it there, and that's going to be more of a, barring any unforeseen showers or anything like that, chances are it's going to be a hotter, faster track, which is more for the development of that. But I want to ask him at least one question that I have in my head, whether or not you can do something with it or not. Oh, hey, I'm glad. Hello, everybody. So yeah, over, I don't know, maybe sooner than later, but over the winter months, when I'm probably going to have to move the whole operation. The whole operation meaning just the board inside, and then start shooting videos inside, because I made it through all last winter, but I got a sneaking suspicion, judging on the temperature so far, that this is going to be a little bit more of a worse winter for me, and I don't want to come out here. The good old cancer too. Do you know a company that makes 10-tooth bully drivers? Not. I know. When I go on JC's, because I looked at them, because I got the mini gear set up now, and I was looking for a 10-tooth, and they say out of stock, so I hadn't messaged Cliff about it yet, because I don't know when he'll be stocked or anything. I probably should do that. And not so much for JC, for my own sake, and the question like you, if I ever get questions like that. But I know JC sells them when they have them in stock. I see it that their online store, they are not in stock, but I should probably text Cliff and find out what's going on there. when they'll be back in stock. Maybe they got bought up for all indoor. I don't know other than Bully. And I'm curious about this. Who was it? Mr. Muckle, I believe his name is. He brought up that you can get a needle bearing, a bearinged 10-tooth driver and 11. And I'm like, really? Because that would come in handy. Now, I posed the question that if you're machining out the inside of the driver, doesn't it get thin? And that's why I've heard that, you know, like 10-tooth break. Is that the case, that people are running needle bearings in them? I just, in general, the material, you know, what the base is, and they're all the way over there. You know, I would imagine machining that out, you could do it to get a needle bearing in there, but to slide over the hub spout in the clutch, it would, you know, it's got to be a certain circumference. So I don't know I don't know enough about it, enough about the needle bearing 10 and 11 tooth drivers, but honestly, I have no idea, other than JC would be my place to get them, but I see they're out of stock. What's going on? Hold on, I don't want to miss any questions here. All right, my uncle runs a coal stove and salamander shop. Yeah, exactly. That's I've had salamanders in the past. They're noisy. They do a good job though. If you want it, I used to milk cows, and we used to have salamanders at the end of the parlor, one down as the holding area, and then one pumping in, and it made it nice and cozy in the parlor. But boy, good luck having any talk, like you say. Do you inside roll, drop duro on, or beat on the outside, prep for reapers? Everything that I know, and people, I'll caveat this with, I know people have inside prepped them, and I know they have prepped them heavy. My experience, because I prepped heavy a set, they slowed the tire down. Now, since then, I've run reapers before, and you know, some of me cutting a tire was getting the rubber off them, and the tires were much faster when you got the rubber off them. And I've been told numerous times, don't internal. If you're gonna internal at all, I would internal very light, maybe add a bit of bite to the tire, although they're a fairly grippy tire to begin with. So I don't see the necessity for it. I would do everything. It's been stated that, you know, like a Maxxis or a Vega is going to take a lot of work at home. You're going to be rolling, you're going to be prepping, you're going to be layering preps and wipes and everything to get to the track. But once you get to the track, you have to do less to the tire. When you run a Reaper or say a Burris, you don't touch it during the week. You don't internal, at least I don't internal Burris. And from what people are telling me and what I've experienced, I don't internal Reapers either, but the day of racing. Reapers, they like to be sanded at the track between runs, and then you can wipe them however you see fit for the track conditions. But everything that you're doing to a Reaper is typically on the day of the race. It's not saying it doesn't work the other way. I've also heard people, you know, 2 days leading up, starting to build a layer. The problem with that is that if you start to build a layer previously to a day of race, like you're wiping, building bite into the tire, again, the Reaper likes to be sanded in between runs, you know, ground, sanded, whatever means you're using there. So because the rubber on a Reaper is very taut, if you want to say, it doesn't penetrate easy with prep. So if that base layer that you put on before, you're just going to end up grinding it off. So you might as well just wait till the day of race, wipe, and build bite at the track, knowing full well after you run, you're going to grind the surface and start over again, type of thing. But yeah, that's my opinion on it. My shop in the house. Nice. Yeah, it would be amazing if I had. Like everyone's from Daga, started 11 champs, ended up with 4. Yeah, that's a bummer. Sorry I couldn't take your call there, Alan. I was in the midst of something. I saw you called. I'm like, nope. I probably could have taken it, but my wife would have been hecka mad at me. Yeah, Are you excited? Are you excited about try out the mini gears? Thinking about it. 10-tooth. Yeah, I. It's more of an experiment than anything at my local track. Now, I've heard you don't need it. I obviously have run a 10-tooth driver there before, but I also know that some of the fast guys, like when I went to Dreamfield, which is a even smaller track than what I typically run on, not as much momentum, really got to jump out of the gas, get back to it. A lot of guys were on minis there. So if I go back, I don't want to be, if that's the hot setup, I don't want to be at a deficit. Did I think I was that far off on speed? No. More experience than anything. Obviously, I had the new chassis thing going. So I was learning a chassis. I was on a tire that I didn't know all that well, the Reaper. I just my experience is limited. So, but I saw some of the guys that were fast and they were on minis, and I thought, if nothing other than I have them with me, I try it. And if time allots, if I don't like it, I can always change to 11. With the clutch basket that separates on the 5.3 titanium clutch, I can just, pull the clutch, grab the basket, change my driver. It's not much of anything to change a rear hub if I gotta go beyond a 56 on my rear axle. So curiosity. I don't think it killed the cat. I think it'll be really good at places like Sellingsdorf, a little bigger of a track where I can go with the smaller driver, get that drive off at the corner a little better. My local track AMS, it may or may not work, but why not? I don't learn anything by doing the same thing over and over again, and I can't convey that learning to you guys if I don't know. If I've never run mini gears, then I just don't know. I can theorize about it a whole bunch, but I won't know. And now that I have them, I will know. I'll be able to experiment with them, say whether I liked them, didn't like them. I've heard people get on them. They didn't like them at first. They put them back on, went back to the regular setup. They're like, hey, let me give it another shot. And when they gave it another shot, it worked great for them. So, I want that experience myself. What's going on? I got to turn my brightness up. Every time I forget to do that. Like you run your brightness down so it doesn't kill your battery, and then I can't read anything. Freeman every 10-2 drivers. Nice. Weaver, okay, Weaver Performance. There's a good answer. When it comes to axle bearing and hub bearings, do you prefer a certain type? I've always thought that the cheap ones have done well. The best you can afford, I would suggest with bearings. If you're doing what most people consider correct, is they have a life, and you run them however many races. I don't know. Take a number out of the air. Everybody's going to have a different opinion on that. If you're replacing the cheap ones often enough, there's no need for, say, ceramic bearings or something like that. I have run ceramic bearings on my open. Did I feel a difference? Absolutely not. I don't feel much any difference on the open. It's just so violent when the pipe hits. So it's not a fair assessment. Ceramic bearings could last longer, but they are a bunch more money. Like a bunch more money. I think for the cost of those, you could probably just invest in multiple sets of cheaper bearings and just replace them more often and still be under that cost of what ceramics. Some people swear by ceramics. I don't doubt them. I think it's, the longevity of them. Obviously the ball bearings aren't going to rust because they're not steel, but changing them more often is probably, probably the cheap ones. If you're going to replace them fairly often, okay. But if you can afford like the next, I think, for instance, Phantom, they offer 3 different options for bearings. They offer a super cheap one, which is the ones I bought because, well, I'm cheap. And then a mid-grade, and then the ceramics. Oh, wow. Hey, what's going on? Yorkshire, UK. That's awesome. Glad to have you here. Do you have a 33-inch titanium axle. Who would have a 33-inch titanium axle? 5.3 titanium, yeah, possibly. I don't know for certain. I haven't looked into it only because I know that, for instance, that where I think it would be. No, I don't want to say that. I just haven't looked into it. I can't afford one. So even though I'd like to run them, I know for, when I went to go run that Attack of the Clones, they said no, those aren't allowed here. We're not getting into that, which to each their own. It's their series, their promotion. They can do what they want. Locally, I could probably run it, unless I see something that says it can't. But when it comes down to it, they're pretty expensive. It's not in my budget. If you can run them and you can afford them, awesome. I'm all for it. I think, titanium, they'll, in my opinion, they'll probably last a little longer than steel will. Obviously, you don't have to deal with, rust and all the other stuff, although the zinc-coated ones do pretty good. But yeah, 5.3 titanium would be my guess there. Maybe JC carries those for them. I don't actually know. Just about everybody at Hunterstown Speedway runs mini gears. Yeah, that's a big fast track, and I definitely can see that being something. Holy crap! there's yellow on my screen. You don't see this side of it. Well, maybe you do a little bit. Years ago, you said older chassis is better. Do you still think that's the case, or modern chassis equal playing field? I think that open karts make older chassis relevant. I will say that. Obviously, it's been proven time and time again that, modern chassis, obviously, take for instance, this year's champ and, 4-time champ, Evan C., is on the newest stuff Ultramax offers. So modern chassis do work with high horsepower. Now, that being said, you can get away with more on an older chassis with an open motor because they're, straightaway speed isn't as, it is inflicted with, roll speed and this and that when you have a lot of horsepower. Now, handling, there's a pro and con to it. An older chassis is going to flex more, has been flexed more. Now, on a soft or mealy track, that's not even a word, track, the older chassis may meld itself into the track to gain traction. We found that, that was a big thing where I used to run at Paradise Speedway. That was most definitely a thing. The older chassis did handle really, really well there because grip was hard to come about. Now, I will say this, that when you get on a higher bite type track, when you say you go to a big, a Maximilian or something like that, when you get to a track that they call good, where it's super bit up, the older chassis is going to cause a lot of flex because it has been flexed for most of its life. There is a certain point to where metal gets fatigued, welds get fatigued, depending on the tubing diameter and the wall thickness. These are all things that are relative to it. But on a track where you kind of gotta, get it yawed is hard to get a hold of. The older chassis do tend to handle, a high horsepower engine not better than a new chassis, but they make it relevant. I've seen a lot of older chassis guys, run older stuff, and it I won't say just as fast, but definitely in the playing field. It gives life to that. There's got to be a place for those older chassis too, aside from the, standard local level, but you're going to have your budget predator classes, stuff like that. Guys that don't have a lot of money and they just want to go race, it gives them a place. Also, the open guys, the UAS guys, the run what you brung, because there's so much horsepower that it allows the chassis to kind of eat into the track and get traction where maybe, a current style chassis is a little too stiff. That's, if you run too stiff of a chassis, it doesn't matter if it's clone, it doesn't matter if it's a UAS. They have a hard time hooking up. They have a hard time dealing with bumps if they're too stiff, to whereas an older chassis might have a chance, and especially saying this. If you've been on a kart, no matter what, what that's characteristics are. The more you're comfortable with it, the more comfortable you are with the adjustments. It doesn't matter the age of chassis. You know, all right, you know, maybe I'm running low cross. This thing's getting tight. You take cross out. Boom, you know, all of a sudden you get better speed. So that's my opinion on that. A new body. I don't need lightweight because I have a bunch of weight anyway. You know, aside from there's the major stores, and I will mention JC. That's where I get mine. I got this here. I'll show you real quick. This is John's Kart body. They also make the Evolution seat, but this is obviously it doesn't have the graphics, but this is a John's Kart body. I thought it was real reasonable. It made it through the season with minor bumps and bruises. I think they are. Yeah, they, like I said, they make the Evolution seat too. But John's Kart bodies seem to make, you know, pretty good stuff. You know, obviously I'm going to say, you know, Chavis is, you know, probably the industry standard of kart bodies. I have a Chavis around here. I beat it up pretty good my first year in Clone. Also, there's was it A&M fiberglass, A&M manufacturing fiberglass. You look them up on Facebook. They Tatum, Super Duper South. They're a sponsor of his. They make super nice stuff. It seems like they spend a lot of time on their bodies. And then there's M&M, which make, if you're not concerned about weight, they have the super tough bodies, which are a plastic. They are, I've run them in the past, at least the nose cone in the past in UAS. They will take a hit. My experience with them was they were a little affected by the heat during the summer. Had a tendency to droop the edges down. But they, you know, it's been so many years. I don't know if they made design change or anything like that. I am not bashing them by any stretch of the imagination. But I had a super tough nose, and it worked well. I just found that it was scrubbing, like it was making me tight because the edges were hitting, and my, you know, you dive into the corner, especially with an open, it has a tendency to load the nose, and that nose was hitting the ground and not allowing my tires to do what they needed to do. But you know, if I'm getting, you know, I know they're sponsor of the channel and all that, so I will promote them. But JC carries. I think they carry Charger bodies. They carry John's Kart bodies. They carry Chavis. I'm not quite sure if they got a deal or not with Hermie Sadler with the Premier bodies. If they only sell those for Premier customers or not. But yeah, Chavis are really good stuff. There's no doubt. It's the 47 there is pretty wicked. You got to change your Nerf bars in order to run that, though. You got to does the same thing like a NASCAR Cup Series. It has these dives behind the front wheel. It's to help with aero push, but you got to modify your Nerf bars in order to put them on. But it's super cool design. They, you know, Chavis makes some super stuff, and if you got the money, if you want to go carbon fiber, they got that option too. Pretty. There's lots of good options. Also, I'll mention this. I don't know how many he sells anymore. Yeah, I just don't know. Local guy to me, or fairly local. He's within an hour. But Randy Treadway, Fusion Composites also makes noses and bodies. I think they're fairly heavy duty. I think I ran one of his noses at one point in time. But yeah, 1993 X Margay. Is that too? Depends what you're using it for. The 93, that's pretty old. Depends what you're using it for. Obviously, something like budget predator, even if you're putting some high horsepower on it, you'll notice a change if you pay attention to the designs of chassis nowadays compared to the olden days. The front hoop from the waist forward was a lot bigger. If you notice current designs, they are moving that. I can kind of show you on this Phantom over here too. Well, it's the seats under here, but you see how far this distance here is to the nose and how small what I call the hoop is. older chassis have a tendency to, the seat is back here. This is still the same size hoop, but these bars connect way back here, and it leaves that, it makes the chassis a lot softer. Again, this is, it's still dirty from Nationals, but you notice how small this hoop is compared to where the waist is. They just slid everything, modern chassis, they slid everything forward to load the nose. It may work, especially on like if for instance, you know, my mind immediately goes to if you have a super dry track, loose track, you're running treads, something like that. It very well might work. It very well might work well. Because like I said, it will find bite to whereas a stiffer type design, a more modern forward load type design may not be able to find that bite. I'd like to, yeah, the slipstreams are super nice. A couple people that I know that run my local track have them, and I was like, those are impressive. I don't have a body deal, you know, Kart body deal, so it's just my opinions. I'd run anything as long as it can take a whooping, because I have a tendency to be pretty rough on stuff. Wayne Arnold makes some excellent fiberglass. Oh yeah. Is it All-Star Kart bodies? Is that one too? Is that Mr. Arnold? Sounds familiar. For those who've been running many years, you feel they give you better. Yeah, chat, if you don't mind getting at Luke there, your opinions on that, because I haven't run them yet. I don't want to. I could tell you in theory what they should do, but I haven't run them yet to actually feel that sensation or not. When you're in sprint cars, everyone was very particular about rear offsets, even though you can move the rear wheels. Yeah, I think the reason they don't concern themselves with wheel offsets, I know it used to be a thing, and they used to label them as such. When you would buy, it would tell you what the offset is, and now it's just, you know, basically give me an 8.5 inch rim, give me a 6.5, give me 2 10s. I think it's because the more they learned, chassis manufacturers learned about it, the more they based it off of a certain, you know, template. These wheels are like this. This is what that makes our chassis do. And everybody just, I don't think there was a meeting about it or anything like that, but just collectively was just like, all right. And as a rim manufacturer, you take Van K or GTR or somebody like that, they're not going to want to invest in more equipment to make different versions of their rims. They're just going to want to, you know, they're going to mass produce whatever they can. All right, this is the offset that these chassis companies, you know, say, hey, this is that. Is there speed in that? Possibly. There really could be speed in it, but it's circumstantial at what type of track you're on. You know, maybe a different offset would be better on a high bike track compared to a low bike track, and vice versa. But for a company like Van K or GTR, like I said, they're just going on, hey, everybody runs this. We're just going to make these rims, and then poof, here we are. You know, all rims are not the same, but they are similar in design with the same offsets. I'll go check standard. Right? Yeah. I'm hoping now, you know, I did reach out to my engine builder there, and I was talking about trying the mini gears at our local track, and he says, you know, he's like, same lap times, Kart felt slow. You know, I eventually have to do a video on chain bind, on gear bound engines, but I'd like to read a little bit more on it. I felt it a couple times when you can't, your engine just won't turn RPM at it. You would add teeth, but it just won't turn RPM. I believe that's gear bound, but trying to explain it so it's absorbable to people without confusing them, because I honestly a little confused myself. Yes, I know it's a thing. I know I felt it, but explaining exactly where it's at and why it's happening, I have to collect my thoughts. I got to do, I don't know if it's more research or more thought into why things are happening. You know, that's where a lot of my opinions and the information I try and give you guys isn't so much that I've read this and I'm just regurgitating the information. It's that I've taken a situation that I felt or that I've read about, and I try and break it down. Why did that happen? Okay, that's because this A, B, C, D led to E. Got it. You know, now it's understandable by me, and I can try and correlate that in a video to people. Correlate. Yeah, maybe that's the word. I gotta stop trying to use big words. I'm not that smart. Mini gears, as you could essentially take an extra tooth off because you go at max RPM quicker. No, that's matter of fact, when I reached out to my engine builder and I talked about the mini gears, I had asked what kind of rear gear do you run on a mini gear setup, say if I change to a 10 tooth. And by my calculations, I should have been on a 54. He's telling me it's more like a 51 or 52. So that makes sense. When you change drivers like that, when you go to the mini gear setup, you're allowed to, you not only lose, you know, your overall ratio will actually shrink a little bit because of the mini gear system. Not so much it'd be a combination of the driver and the size of your, you know, your rear gear, that you're actually losing more teeth and running a smaller ratio than what you would consider that. Like if I had ran what I thought I'd probably be, you know, turning my clone like, you know, 7,400, 7,500. I'm sure I'd be floating the valve somewhere around there. So it was good to know and good to reach out to him, but he was just like, I don't think you need it. And I may not need it, but I figured, you know, going into next year, I'm already going in on a different chassis. I might as well just, you know, really, if you're gonna do anything right, you might as well do it. You know, if anything's worth doing right, just do it. I might as well experiment with a whole bunch of things, not only, you know, chassis and this and that. You know, obviously I'll be on the same type of tire, so I know vaguely what to do with tires, but see if I can get some speed out of this thing. You know, one of my biggest cruxes with the local track that I run is that it turned well, but I was slow. Like it just felt slow. I don't know if I was missing on gear. I don't know if it was a chassis setup. I tried multiple chassis setups. I did different stuff to the tires, and it turned well, but it felt slow. When I went and ran Dreamfield on the Shatter, it didn't feel slow. It didn't feel bound at all. And I was like, oh, well, all right. Now, you know, in my brain, I'm like, ooh, this is exactly what I think I might need for my local track to be free enough to be fast. So why not throw some gears into the mix and try those too? Yep. It's funny that I put out a couple videos. I guess it was way back when of the Open, and they're just like, just hold it to the mat. And it's just like the 270 on a 10th mile. Yeah, that's a keyboard commando offering if I've ever heard one. It's just like you ain't never had the throttle stick on you on one of these things, have you? Oh, it's just a little go-kart. Oh, really? Well, I can assure you there's less to cover you up when you pace the wall. And go ahead, hold it wide open, because that's exactly what you're going to do, is pace that wall. Oh, my goodness. I couldn't even imagine going around AMS on the Open and just holding it wide open. Oh, this is it. I'm in danger. Back in the day when I ran flathead, the tread was running the biggest gear combo possible for momentum. A lot has changed since then. Yep. It's not without experimentation, because people will do that. They will try a bigger driver, and I will say the speed is there. This is my opinion. I wasn't under, I obviously wasn't behind the wheel experiencing this. But what you may gain in lap time, you could suffer defeat off starts and restarts. If you are running an extra tooth on your driver and, it somewhat similar of a gear ratio, there is something to it. I know people argue all day long, ratio is ratio. Well, I can tell you that I had physical evidence of seeing what happened when I was running a 15 driver versus people running 13 drivers with mini gears last year. I saw it, I seen it with my own eyes that they had that extra. They had the extra off the corner, and I'm like, there's something to it. Now, scientifically, it's not correct because ratio is ratio, but there is something about that. Now, in the world of, it's the same in clone world, but my experience is mostly with open. So when you change to a bigger driver, you do change the torque dynamic of the engine and how much torque. The bigger driver you run, the more torque you get out of the engine, at least the application to the ground. But the smaller driver spools up a lot quicker. So it's a decision you have to make. Again, you run a bigger driver, it has a tendency to suffer a little on starts and restarts, but at the end of the shoot, you're carrying more speed. If you can maintain that speed, you have a faster lap time. Now, I think the smaller driver has an advantage for passing. If somebody gets out of shape and you get back to the gas quicker, you got a line on them. Again, with the spooling up, that smaller driver is going to spool up a lot quicker. It's going to allow you to pass easier. Now, the argument could be that if you run the correct line, if you're able to undercut them right, even running the bigger driver, that your momentum would just carry you through regardless, and then down the straightaway, you would just yank them. So there is gives and takes. There's a yin-yang theory that always bounces around in my head that you give up something to get something else, and you have to make the decision whether or not that is, in your driving style, in your tire style, there's just tons of variables that goes with it. Yeah, I know. And Richard Jordan was there, Mike, and he considered, he's talked since he resigned as Central New York UAS administrator. He's talked about bringing back a UAS to New York. I know, Ernie runs the one that's called Western, or maybe it's Erie now. I don't know if that's a name change or not, but to where we could hit tracks in, Central and Eastern New York. And, he's like, what do you think? I'm like, we raced on Champion, man. I'm not against it. The only thing that's a bummer is that we could maybe fit it, if this did happen, we could fit it into because they run Fridays. I prefer Saturday night racing. It's just, dude, Friday nights are, I work till 5 o'clock, and yes, I could take a half day or something like that, but it makes it a big bugaboo for me. Friday night racing hasn't always been my favorite. I'll do it if I have to, but I prefer Saturday night racing, and I know the position that Brandon's in at Dreamfield, so it is what it is. But as far as track size or anything like that, I'm not afraid to put my open on that. That would, off throttle time makes for good racing, and whoever can figure out the best, will be your winner. But I think there was enough grip at Dreamfield to handle an open. Obviously, like I said, we ran it at Champion, and we managed to get around there. Sense when you're talking low horsepower. Yeah. Yep. I hope I do. That was one of the problems that when I was only running UAS, I started this channel. I was talking in theory about clone racing because everything should transfer over. The problem is the horsepower just makes the UAS makes the whole thing weird to try and explain, because when you got 70 horsepower, I'm just taking a guess at what my engine makes, it's a lot different than 15. And the way you drive is different. the way you make handling and everything. Now, the technically it'd be the same, but there's just differences. Yeah, I didn't feel that. I saw it because I was on a 15. I haven't experienced a 13 yet. I fully intend to go with it. I believe it was a 13 if I'm taking a guess. I had to look over the gear. I'm pretty sure that's a 15. I think they were 2 drivers smaller than me, but obviously, the rear gear would change as well to kind of match that. But yeah, I would go wide open at the flag stand. I was in the back, my own fault, not enough speed is what it is. But I would go wide open, and by the time I caught the back of the pack on the back stretch, they were, the leaders were obviously going, and it would just take forever for it to get going. It was very laggy to whereas I saw, with my own eyes, I saw him go, and I'm like, what is that? I don't think anybody's, overly out horsepowering one another. I mean, cones are pretty close in horsepower. I'm sure some are, rippers. I always find that funny. Just like, oh, that engine, it's a butt kicker and everything. And I come from UAS, so I'm like, all right, I get what you're saying, but okay. It's anecdotal evidence. There's a big word for you. Can I prove it? No, but I saw it. From my perception. What kind of flag? This is Beard Octane. It's this is a Betsy Ross flag with a Beard Octane logo in it. Their sponsor channel. Ben 10 will save you 10% at beardoctane.com. If you have a beard, if you're into beard oils or anything like that. I don't usually promote because normally, I won't say racers don't have beards, but it's some care for the beard, some don't. Some people just get up and take a shower, and that's the end of the day. I could make an argument. I have a whole nother channel that I started this endeavor on YouTube on called now it's called Benjamin Reviews. It was called something else before that, but where I do beard product reviews and this and that. That's how I learned my internet etiquette. But yeah, that's a Beard Octane flag that I got a couple years ago. Yeah, absolutely. That's unless you're one of the top teams, and I got no gripes about them whatsoever. If you've made racing into your living, awesome. I think that is fantastic. A majority of people, though, pay to play. We do it because we love it. We do it because we're competitive. We do it because we want to be outside, not in front of in front of our screens all the time. And we enjoy the camaraderie and the family and everything that goes with racing. But yeah, it's an expensive hobby, but I think adrenaline's the best drug on earth. And that everybody's got to pay for their drug some way or another. Are minis legal for predators? Yeah, no shave. Yeah, it is no shave November. I haven't shaved since 2018. Right down. I mean, I do my cheeks and stuff and my neck, but I had a big beard before and I look ridiculous. There's a picture in here somewhere. Oh, right there. My wife often fantasizes. She's like, oh, remember when you had a big beard? I said, do you remember how ridiculous I looked with it? She's like, oh, no, you didn't. Bam. What in the... It was fun to do. It was a fun experience. I didn't wear it well. Proper care and all that stuff. But yeah, that was close to as long as I got it. Maybe a little bit longer. I had, maintenance trim and what have you. But this is far more manageable, more thing. Are minis legals for predators? I would assume so, unless you have a gear rule. I do know that a lot of predators like the gear rule, like on local basis. I think if you go to a bigger show or something like that, a bigger promotion, it's probably not a thing. But you will oftentimes, not in the adults so much, but you will find that they have a gear rule. The kids have a gear rule usually. but minis might be legal. But then again, you have to look at your local track type of scenario. Do they have rules against titanium? Do they have a gear rule? Do they have this or that? That's, that I don't disagree with the premise of having a class that is made for the budget friendly person that can't afford, this or that. If they're doing a dirty tire rule, or if they're doing, predators, take the governor out and don't do anything else. And an RPM rule is another thing that people do. You can run whatever gears you want. You could run minis, but you do not exceed 5,500 RPM, something like that. They'll check your tack afterwards. They'll come by, and if you exceeded, say, 5,500 RPM, they go, "Yep, you're DQ'd, you're done. No doing that." Being an old, took me a little bit to believe in mini gear system, and then I finally tried it, and definitely a big difference. There's more torque in the clone. Oh yeah, most definitely. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, if you're talking about the like the budget friendly stuff, what's the rule? Is it 10-year-old chassis? 10 or 11-year-old chassis, something like that. A lot of them have the extreme budget friendly Predator class. Yeah, XBP, to where you have to run an older chassis. Obviously a Harbor Freight engine, take the governor out. You're not allowed to do this or that to it. Don't touch it. You can go race it, don't touch it, but you got to be on an older chassis. Now, the older chassis thing is fine. The problem being is, most chassis manufacturers will eventually stop producing whatever spindles they have, or say bearing hangers or this or that. That stuff's still available. It just becomes harder and harder to come by. And yes, if you know somebody, you can just have them make spindles or get a hold of somebody, but that becomes costly. It's a great concept, but they're, I don't even know, like a lot of chassis, I guess you could tell by looking at them, if you were knowledgeable enough, whether or not it's a more modern chassis. But I mean, we're falling into 2026 here, which would, if it's a 10-year-old rule, yeah, 2016, there's a lot of good chassis that came out then. Or is it 10 year? Is it 15 year? I don't know. Anyway, even at say 15 years, 2010 and up, a lot of good chassis were made around that time. I think 12 was the Triton. Is that going to start to be a thing to where, people are able to get on what would be considered a more modern chassis, even in extreme stuff. Well, hello, sassy girl. I try and say hello, everybody, even if I don't mention your name. Hello. But yeah. Mike in here, they have the Predator 212 laps, and he was saying something about that, and I was just like, man, that might be fun. Now, one might wonder, will a bend fall out of the out of the wheel, fall out of the seat in 212 laps? Never been 212. I've been 50 laps in a clone. I've been 30 laps in an open. Maybe, maybe not. If it's handling good, no problem. I got this. If it's handling badly, that's race shape. I've done a video on that and exercising this and that. It does come with handling. The worse your kart handles, the tendency is to get tired, because you're sawing on the wheel trying to get the kart to do things that it doesn't want to do. We're going to put you on one. You'll be fine. I hope so. If you see me, I'll put the strap on. I'll do that thing. Matter of fact, I gotta look into that with the new helmet, the new Zamp, putting a loop on it. So I don't use it that often. I'm not bragging. I'm not being a dink like that, but I'm fairly strong. My neck's fairly strong. Lifting weights and doing all I do physically for a job and everything. So I haven't had my neck be a problem in a very long time. I'm sure there's going to come a point where it's I'm going to be on a track that disagrees. But yeah. Let's get her done. It'd be fine. Like I said, I've said a bunch of times, I don't care what, I'll race it. You know, that's as long as I don't die, I'm good with it. No hurting myself. I do have to work in the morning, and I do find that troubling sometimes. People's actions on track, people's actions coming off track, fighting, whatever. I get it. We're humans. We do it. Some people like that stuff. Some people love the controversy. But it's like, man, like what you said, we do this for fun. All of us, I would venture a guess, at 99.999% do not do this for a living. Therefore, we have to get up and go to work on Monday. So, if you're wrecking people and making a already dangerous sport even more dangerous, that's problematic, to say the least. Yeah. So, yep, me too. Mine in my pocket too, and it is my current receiver. I'm debating on getting the product 43 there, or 43, product 41. My bad. Put up those new receivers, and I'm like, I'm thinking honestly about either buying the mount only, and using my current one, or buying a whole new one and getting the mount system for on the helmet. I think that's a great idea. Just loops in there, and then you don't have to worry about it. Obviously don't throw down your helmet and, do anything dumb there, but it would mount on your helmet, so it's easier to deal with. But right now, I currently put it in my pocket. I have hit some button that I don't understand what is going on, but every time I turn my receiver on, it is not on the usual channel. It is on some obscure channel. And I honestly have been lazy. I haven't looked into how to change it. I'm sure there's either a video on it, or somebody's done, or there is some literature for me to set it back to the, what is it, 454.000, and set that. I keep on forgetting, and I get to the track and I turn it on. And I go, ugh. But I think if I eventually do that, or I buy a new one, I think I would like to purchase the helmet mount, just because it is a nightmare. Like, at one point in time, we're at a track that's no longer open anymore, Adrenaline Mountain. We're doing a Scott Partlett. Is that his name? He's a photographer, and he unfortunately lost his life. But we're doing a 4-wide salute, and I don't think I had my helmet on. Maybe I had my helmet on, but I had the receiver draped over my shoulder. Well, during the 4-wide salute, we were all just, everybody at the track was driving around the track as a thing, and it slipped off my shoulder and got in the rear tire and ripped one of the earbuds off. I'm still running the same wire, but just one side and one ear. But it was just like, what a pain in the butt. And then I see, a bunch of people have them mounted to their helmet. I think, wow, that is an exceptionally good idea. That would, one of your, yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I don't know if I could deal with Tunes Racing. I'm pretty into it. Like, I don't, I lift weights and stuff. Having my AirPods in and crushing some weights, cool. I don't know that I would love that racing. It would be funny to do, but I like to hear the engine. I like to hear the RPM. I like to be locked into racing. But yeah, that would be pretty funny. Slipknot's pretty good. My favorite, not that you guys asked, my favorite bands of all time are Faith No More, Korn, and Deftones. I don't know if you know that somebody had said they're just like, oh, you listen to that kind of music? I'm like, how did you not know that? I mean, maybe I haven't mentioned it, but I mean, I'm covered in tattoos and I'm Gen X, so. Did you think I listened to country? Not saying anything wrong with country, it's just not my thing. Yeah, no, I'm a metalhead. I like metal. I listen to all sorts of music. I don't care what it is. Yeah, it's all good. But yeah, time is it going to be? 54. Oh, we're nearing the end of yet another session. Ben's therapy session, apparently. Yeah. I started off the thing. I was watching, or was watching. I wish I could watch. The Four Takes and Fuel podcast. They were talking about World 100, and I just checked on who was doing well and everything like that. Congrats on Ultramax winning the World 100. That's fantastic. But apparently there's a big to-do. People are upset because the track, just wasn't what it once, what it was supposed to be that night. And I understand your frustration, but man, everybody's on the same track. Everybody has a decision to make on tires. Just because what you brought to the track didn't work, dirt tracks are dirt tracks, man. They're not all cookie cutter. They don't drive the same. They're not the type of surface. Sometimes they break up, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it rains, sometimes there's fog, sometimes there's this, that. So kudos to the winner. I drawn a blank on who he was. But kudos to him for excelling when others could not. I got no ill will, no, people gripe because people gripe. People like to complain about stuff, and I get it. If you were one of the bigger teams that didn't do so well, I can understand being a bit upset. But man, don't take anything away from the winner. He just made the right call, and that happens. And like the Four Takes and Fuels guy who were saying, it does. Sometimes you can be a little dismayed, a little put off by seeing the same names up front. There's a reason why they're up front. They're really, really good. But when an underdog, we'll call him that, even though the gentleman is very skilled, very knowledgeable, very, very good at what he does, when you see somebody who isn't one of the bigger teams win, that's fantastic. That does give hope that, man, maybe, just maybe, I can make the right call. Maybe I can bring the right set of tires. Maybe I can make the right adjustment and, slay Goliath, if you will. I think it's fantastic. I am all about the underdog story. I think it's fantastic. Don't get me wrong. You need superstars to strive for. You got to have that Goliath to beat, but to see somebody do it is fantastic. To see somebody just hit just right and go out there and be like, this is how it's done, boys. And I was like, heck yeah, woo, good job. So my thought on full rear floor pins. I got the diffusers. People put diffusers on them. There's got to be something to them, especially bigger, faster tracks. It's air movement. I know that all too well from UAS racing. Air does make a difference. That's why you get into got mentioned, the Chavis slipstreams, things like that, different body types, the way they create downforce, the way they react to, pushing, getting aero tight behind somebody because you don't have as much downforce on your nose. That's a thing. And the diffusers coming from the rear. I don't currently have one for a reason, and I'll get to that. But they do cause air manipulation to actually work. It does cause something to do. To what degree? Debatable. Now, the reason I don't run them anymore, I got nothing against them. Maybe I would try and run them. The problem is where I race up north, our tracks are, we'll say, rough at times. I'll just be nice. And they are rough at times. And the Scythe, for instance, I'm looking at it over there. It came with an aluminum front belly pan, and I beat it to snot on our tracks. It's not a very conducive part of the country to be running a whole lot of underbody. That said, if you get on anything that is a bit smoother, absolutely great idea, and they look awesome. As long as it doesn't hurt the kart at all, I'm all about making that thing look sweet. And a rear belly pan with a diffuser on it, not a diffuser, whatever you're on. I think it makes the kart look better. I think it makes it look more like a racing item than just some tubes with an engine tied to it. So I think it's really cool. I would probably run them again. I'd probably try them again. It's just a matter of finances. Am I going to invest in something that I more than likely am going to break sometime during the season? The answer obviously is no. I'm not going to put it on there for no reason. But if I were to, if I were to invest in one, maybe I would go into Sullins Grove, go into Hunterstown, go into a track that has a lot more speed, a lot more potential for an aero push, or, a potential of manipulating the air. I think that it would be a good investment, even if you're taking it off. Say I'm running up here, I don't want to run it. I'm going down to run Hunterstown. Put the rear diffuser back on and run it down there, and gain whatever advantage I possibly can on the competition. So that's my opinion on that. Take it or leave it for where you got. Would you hand it to me? Got home and seen the 100 happen. Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. I was doing something Saturday. I can't remember what it was, but then I don't know. It got to be later, and then all of a sudden I saw something about it. I was like, oh, the 100. Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely, man. But yeah, we are at an hour. I try and only put an hour in, especially when I'm sitting out here in the cold. Like I'm not horrible bad. I got layers going on, but also my hands are kind of cold. And as soon as I start to see my breath, maybe it's a mental thing that I want to go inside. But yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming by once again. I'm not super positive. Usually I give a clue or, mention what I'm going to do on Sunday for a video, but I'm not completely sold on what I intended on doing on Saturday or recording Saturday for Sunday. So it'll be a guess. You find a cool place in the Northeast. I like Red Bull to pass some time in the winter. For racing in the summer is enough. Yeah, it is. I think we're so used to being in the north and giving up winters that you kind of, I'd use a more coarse term for it, but we have our fun when we have it. We spend our money during the summer doing all we can do, and then when winter hits, we're ready to shut it down. We're okay. It's time to go through the chassis, get our engines built, this and that. It's just we have longer months obviously than everybody else when you live in the northern territory, but we're just used to it. So it's the way things go. But yeah, I agree. If we had something indoor, if we had a dirt, me personally, I don't like racing. I've raced it a couple times at Coke Syrup. It's great to watch. The last time I run it, I did not have the best of times. It wasn't even mechanical or anything like that. I just, I left there feeling kind of like, yeah, I'm good. I'm good. So, but if we had something, like a Williamston or something like that, or, if they had a dirt indoor, I might be game. I might be game to go and do that. That would be sweet. Just saying. Yes, you too. Let's go November 1st, March 1st, off season, refresh. Yep, absolutely. But yeah, all right, guys, I'm going to bounce off here, and I hope you watch the video on Sunday. Who knows what it's going to be? I have to make my mind up and shoot it still, but I appreciate you all coming by. Again, you make Thursdays fun. That's kind of a weird day, but you guys make it a lot of fun for me. I get home out of work, work out, eat dinner, come out here, hang out with you guys. I have an absolute blast. Thank you very much for coming out every single week. So I'll catch you guys later.